Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? Wednesday, January 18th, 2017. We creep ever closer to our 0 hour with the inauguration, yes, unbelievably true, of Donald Trump to come on Friday. We'll sneak one more episode of free Kagro in the Morning in on Friday before the big switchover, and then after that, big question marks. We'll see. Is it the end of free America? I sound like a real now I'm trying out the role of a real radical radio host here for you. I mean, I think that's what you have to do to survive, right? Oh my gosh, Radio Free America. That's what we'll have to bill ourselves. Well, we hope everything will keep going. We hope, we hope it's still legal. Fingers crossed for that one. And two, we may be spending more and more time watching exactly what the Senate is doing with what's going on with the Trump agenda and holding it up and saving America from that. We'll see. Things still not yet quite taking shape, but we'll go our merry way. Nothing's happening today in the Senate. The Senate stands in adjournment. Stands adjourned, not in recess. There's a difference, and I don't even really know offhand what the difference is. But anyway, they stand adjourned until Friday, at which point, they will gather in the Senate chamber just to assemble for the inauguration. But they don't come back into session until 4 p.m. on Friday. Friday would be the first opportunity for the Senate to take up on the floor votes on the nominations that Trump has made for his cabinet and other positions subject to the advice and consent of the Senate. Nothing will happen in between then and now, in case you were kind of wondering about that. And the subject has come up once or twice. Donald Trump, of course, not yet president, and technically speaking, he cannot have made any of these nominations for the cabinet positions or anything else, as they require a communication to the Senate from the president notifying them of such a nomination, and he's not the president yet, and he can't send them that communication. However, everyone understands that the communication is coming. The hearings that are taking place are just a matter of the chairman of each of the relevant committees deciding that's how he wants the committee to use its time in between their swearing into office on January 3rd and the president's inauguration on the 20th. On the 20th, or what often happens, is all of the nominations that they feel like they've taken care of by way of having adequate hearings and questions having been posed, and usually the nominees having submitted financial disclosure forms, ethics, compliance forms, etc. There's a series of votes. They usually don't even take very long. Some of them are even voice votes, although usually for cabinet secretary, they will record those votes. And they run through the top 5, 6, sometimes more nominations just to fill out that cabinet on the afternoon of inauguration, because there's not much else going on. And they got to waste some time in between the inauguration and the parties. So that often will take place. We'll see that process, I guess, begin on Friday. Whether or not the Democrats decide to let any of those votes go forward on Friday is an open question. We ought to be, by the way, calling their offices and encouraging them not to allow that to be the case. There's going to be some significant pressure, of course, on all senators to get that cabinet filled. It's an awkward situation normally when you have a normal person coming into the presidency, an awkward situation to install someone in the presidency and not have them have a cabinet around them. And it might be particularly dangerous in the case of Donald Trump, because, well, it's hard to tell. Again, normally you want the cabinet around them because you consider, formally speaking anyway, the cabinet to be part of their advisory board, so to speak. I don't know how often that really happens anymore in the modern context, that he gathers the cabinet around him to consult on what ought to be going on policy-wise and how to, the public-facing part of the White House. The cabinet, not really, it's not like the movie Dave where they all get together and figure out the budget, right? So it might not make any difference one way or the other. And this cabinet in particular, as evidenced by the last week or so of hearings, attempts to convening hearings and finding that there's just simply no information available, etc. And yesterday's insane display in the confirmation hearing for Betsy DeVos, well, everybody's talking about that, and we'll talk about it too. In the meantime, I'll just introduce our show one more time, 10 minutes into it. This is us, Kagro in the Morning. Daily Kos Radio, as a matter of fact. And we're live now, as Bill tells us, all the way from Portland, Maine, which means our signals reach at least that far. Kagro X, that's me, David Waldman. Today I'll be wondering if guns in schools are enough to fight bears. We might need nukes. It's true. This was part of the insanity of the Betsy DeVos confirmation hearings, if that's what they end up being. There certainly were hearings. Whether they were confirmation hearings or not, we have yet to find out. Apparently, at some point, she is asked about the policy of gun-free school zones. That probably came up a couple of times. But, Greg, it was your senator, I think, who had this particular exchange with her. Mm-hmm. I didn't see the prelude exchange that she refers to, in which she tells the story or references a story about a Wyoming school that apparently needed, I don't know whether they had them or not, needed guns around to fight off a grizzly bear of some kind.
The proper treatment or the proper prevention for that is actually fences, not guns.
Well, that's according to bears, to be fair.
Well, good fences make good neighbors if your neighbor's a bear.
Yes. Well, so anyway, so she came around to saying she wasn't entirely...
stole that. Somebody said that, but it's correct.
She wasn't entirely sure whether or not guns should be banned entirely from schools because what about bears? And, that only leads to more questions. What about Godzilla? Yeah. What about two bears? Are these is this what they're talking about when they say the right to bear arms? Like you're supposed to have arms around that shoot bears? There's bear
insightful
arms?
Versus insightful, right?
Can't tell. Don't have any idea. Verbal. But that's the big joke this morning. The other big joke, of course.
Because Donald Trump is a very insightful president.
Yes, that's
right.
It's
true. But
Absolutely.
when you see it in writing, you go, yeah, it's true.
Well, that's why we don't write anything on the show.
CIT, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty
my
crazy.
senator, Senator Murphy, says, why don't you come back and discuss it locally?
Yeah, well, that's a good idea. She should come back and discuss everything. The other sort of outrage of the whole thing was apparently Lamar Alexander is the chair of the committee, and he decided she's filed no financial disclosure, no ethics paperwork, no nothing. Nobody knows what the hell her story is. She's worth $5 billion, that they know, but they don't know how, why, where it is, what sort of conflicts might exist. Lamar Alexander decided there'll be one round of questions, 5 minutes per senator, which is the norm. 5 minutes is the norm anyway, but usually there's 3, 4, 5 rounds, sometimes 2 days of hearings. They convene these things at 5 p.m. yesterday. Everybody gets one round of questions, and then make up your mind on Friday. Cast your votes. That's it. That's pretty ridiculous. And Lamar Alexander doesn't usually go in for that sort of thing, but, the fact is...
you have a wounded candidate who in normal circumstances wouldn't get anywhere. Then you got to start changing the rules because you can't. Because, who holds the gavel in process is actually in charge of the result.
Yep.
I learned that from a really smart guy I do a radio show with. It's just so underappreciated.
The show? Yes.
No. The show is well appreciated. That concept I'm talking about.
Well, yes, we're concept players. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll talk more about that, doubtless. No hearing. I don't know if, not no hearings. I was going to say no floor action today in the Senate. So anybody who is worried about something ugly passing can relax. You got to wait till Friday for it to pass. But I guess that leaves C-SPAN 2 free for some hearings, which is good news.
Or reruns of book club from 9 years ago. Those are my favorites.
Well, if you like classical music, it's It's a great place to gather.
It's really good, but it doesn't let you call in, Don't they have they still have the 3 phone numbers, like call in here if you're a Republican, call in here if you're a Democrat, call in here if you're a crank. Don't they still have those?
They do. Yes, the independent line is my favorite.
But it's no fun if it's like from 9 years ago, because you're trying to call. I want to call that crank line,
And the people aren't crazy enough.
Going on. Well, it's from 9 years ago. I don't care.
Yeah,
I got a relevant point to make. I should have said it at the time.
It's so adorable. They're talking about things that seem so trivial.
Yes.
But okay. Well, now these days, of course, the end of America and whatnot. You want to call in and comment on that?
So, just in passing, Laura Clausen has this fantastic headline over at Daily Kos, this lead story right now. Betsy DeVos outpaces Ben Carson as Trump's least prepared nominee. It's like right out of the onion, except it's not.
How did you even get past Ben? That's amazing.
If you pass Ben, that is pretty amazing.
I mean, he is asleep most of the time.
Yeah.
Still.
And, a lot of them are going to get confirmed.
Yes. Apparently they are all very frightened about the consequences of not confirming one, and Republicans are worried that Trump's wrath will be visited on them if they don't simply just use their majority to rubber stamp everybody. And it might be.
It's true. Could happen. So, a couple of concepts there. When I was on the show on Monday, we sort of talked about this whole thing about narrative and story arc, and I just thought it was important because the narrative usually wins, not necessarily the facts. So 2 points about that. First is this NBC Wall Street Journal poll that came out since I was on the show. There's a nice write-up about it today in First Read by Mark Murray and the crew there over at NBC. And they talk about the approval ratings in the NBC Wall Street Journal poll from January. So Trump's net approval rating among subgroups. Okay, so positive is a positive number, and negative is if the group doesn't like you. So listen to this. Whites, he's got 4% approval rating. With men, it's 12. That is to say, it's a plus 12, the way that we usually report the NBC Wall Street Journal poll. Seniors is a plus 5. So there are some smart senior women. They're not as into it as the men are. The men are like total dunderheads here. Okay. Ages 50 to 64, plus 1. I mean, it's basically split. Ages 35 to 49 plus 5. Some of these grew up during the Reagan era and don't really understand. But that's one of the more conservative cohorts if you look at it. That's always been true for the last, decade or so. 18 to 34, which is the Obama coalition, minus 34. Women minus 26. Latinos minus 28, and African Americans minus 70. So one of the reasons that he's historically unpopular in terms of president-elect is because he's not reached out to the Obama coalition, the article points out, and nobody who voted against them is coming around. It's just not happening.
Well,
there's just absolutely no honeymoon period, which is really remarkable because that's not what usually happens. Didn't happen to Obama at all. A whole lot of people didn't vote for him.
True. Well, it's only Wednesday.
And
he's not inaugurated until Friday. So the charm offensive could happen in between then and now.
It could. Or tweet offensive.
Right. Oh, well, yes, all his tweets are offensive. So anytime he could just take that up and win us over with his something. So that was actually pretty good. And also, they point out this, which I found interesting. So they point out what happens when you don't reach out to your opponents, but also that Hillary Clinton lost the presidential election as much as Trump won it, because how do you lose to somebody like this? Yes.
And, a couple of comments about that. She was certainly unpopular. She wasn't always unpopular. She became unpopular because the press decided it was going to be so. So if you put this email story every single day for a year, that's part of the narrative arc, and then you can't get rid of that. And let me just interject here. When you think about this and what people did and simple wins.
Yes.
Simple wins. I don't know. I don't have any specifics, but she's corrupt. I don't know. I don't have any specifics, but I don't like her. I don't know, but Clinton Foundation was in the news, vague. every day. Sure, they mention Trump. That's even obvious that it's a bad Trump University, but like 2-day story gone.
Yeah.
So if you build this narrative arc, then it sticks. If you throw, and you're about to win anyway despite it, and then you throw things like Comey and stuff into the mix, then you lose. So you have the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak, with Comey, but it was the WikiLeaks stuff, drip, 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 that depresses Obama coalition voting. And by the way, that's a Russian operation. And therefore, the idea that, well, give me the specifics on where the Russians did X to this machine and change votes, or even if you're saying that the Russian WikiLeaks connection is the thing that made people vote, where's the evidence? It's a narrative arc. It's not that it's not true, but the specifics aren't that important. And so after the election, what happens is that Trump can deny that there's no relationship with the Russians. But that is a story that's every day. It keeps the Obama coalition, who are more attuned to this, from ever turning to Trump. And I think over time, because it's not going away, and there'll be more drip, 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 and more stuff will come out, I think it's going to ruin his presidency. That's my prediction. I'm putting down my marker.
Certainly ruin the sheets.
Yeah, well, So you have all of that. And then the third thing, which I think is absolutely true,
okay.
Trump probably wishes Clinton were still around to campaign against.
Oh, yeah.
And without her, he has to justify what he's doing.
He should go walking through the woods.
To do.
Looking for her. I think that would make a great video.
Yep.
Although I think he sort of shuffles.
Yep.
Well, he could take a golf cart.
Mm-hmm. He could. So, all of that is true at the same time. And so you've got these hearings, and you have all of these people, Betsy DeVos and Ben Carson and so on and so forth. And, that's going to stick too. I don't remember the specifics of all the things that made the Secretary of State look like he wasn't there.
What?
But I'm going to remember that a lot of his cabinet people didn't have good hearings, that people had questions about. I don't remember the specifics, but I remember that it didn't go smooth. I don't remember what Ben Carson said, but I remember Ben Carson had a terrible hearing. I don't remember what Betsy DeVos said, but she was not prepared. I remember that. So the simple stuff, I think, is really the stuff that sticks.
Okay.
And having said that, there's this great article from James Downey, who's the digital editor over at the Washington Post.
Okay.
Okay? And the title of the article, I think it's the first one I left you in the Skype list there. I always refer to Skype listeners because I like David to be able to look along and read, and especially if there's graphics and pictures, which are really difficult to show on the radio. I mean, you can show them, but you can't see them. So I have this list, and so he can click, and sometimes if I get delayed or I get stuck, he could at least refer to the list. Sometimes he does that on the show. So this one is what Democrats must avoid in fighting back against Trump. And basically says, if you look at the ABC Washington Post poll, there's little good news. Clear majorities expect he'll do a good job in the economy and fighting terrorism, and that's it. He's got the lowest favorability rating of any incoming president. It's a little different look at the same kind of stuff that the NBC Wall Street Journal poll is picking up. But it points out Democrats should not sit around and wait for the Trump presidency to collapse in and of itself.
Even over the weekend when he's gone?
Even between now and Thursday, even after the weekend when he's gone, because he's never gone. But his advice.
Yes.
Democrats are really interested in fighting back. If Democrats are really to fight back, they would be wise to pay attention to one key lesson. You do better when you make it concrete. Okay, and this is, again, keeping it simple and going back to story and narrative arc. Okay. Do you think Trump and his family and advisors are or are not complying with federal ethics laws? Versus, do you think Trump should or shouldn't release his tax returns?
Yes. Americans
are split on the former. 43 say yes and 44 say no. And on tax returns, 74% said he should, including 53% of Republicans.
I see.
Aren't they the same thing? It's like Obamacare and the ACA. Everybody knows you should release your tax returns. Releasing your tax returns is part of being ethical. But who the heck, outside of a few select people who really study this stuff, what are federal ethics laws? What are the rules? What's the penalty for not, when is it that the president has to do it versus his people have to do? Nobody knows this stuff.
That's true.
So how do you answer the question? On the other hand, should he release his tax return? Of course. I understand that. I do it. You should do it too. What if it's the same question? ACA versus Obamacare. I hate Obamacare, but I like ACA.
Right. Huh. Well, okay. Although I think stories like, I wonder if people think it's against federal ethics laws to hire prostitutes for golden showers.
But he wasn't in the government at the time, so it doesn't count.
Things.
It's when he was young and foolish, like George Bush.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I suppose some people will remember that, but others forget. What do you mean he wasn't in the government?
Right. I mean, it all does blend together, and you're absolutely right. You are right, because that's part of the narrative arc. I don't even remember that it's when he wasn't in government that he was a crook and a shyster, but if he's a crook and a shyster, isn't that what matters?
Yes. Well, that's what people think of, or should think of, when they think of not meeting government ethical standards. Oh, crook and a shyster. Oh, okay. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. Well, maybe it would have been a better question. Said, do you think Trump's a crook?
Yeah.
But they never asked that. Well, it's a leading question. No, actually, it's a very revealing question.
Well, I guess it could be considered leading. All right, pick your own word. Thief? Is that what you would prefer? Oh, well, that's leading too.
Right. The poll results show repeatedly the less abstract the question, the worse Trump fares. On broad questions like how will you handle policy, split. But 1/3 of respondents back a ban on most non-citizen Muslims from entering the country. A third, support his border wall. A third, numbers 37, 31, want to withdraw from the Paris climate deal. And with healthcare. The more discussion focused on the actual provisions, the less room Trump and Republicans have to maneuver. So the poll results, Downey says, argue that it's not enough for the message to be we like ethics and we're against Trump. Okay, it's like uniting against George Bush in 2004. Not good enough. You have to have specific, concrete terms. He's going to take away your health insurance. He's going to take away Medicare. He's going to take away Social Security. Whatever it is, it's got to be concrete. People understand that. That's the message from all this polling.
I think we can get that.
Yeah, I think so. People have said that. People have complained all during the, and this is something that the Bernie voters were right about during the primaries. That Bernie had a story and Clinton didn't.
Yeah.
Bernie could tell you, nothing about specifics. But he could tell you what he wanted to do. And you sort of got it.
Yeah.
Right? And Clinton could tell you all about the specifics, but I don't think that people's voting minds, at least not enough to win in Michigan and Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, why are you running? And what do you really want to do writ large? Because otherwise you see politician. And politician is one of those simple things. Hate politicians. You got to convince me that as a politician, you are going to overcome my innate dislike for politicians, because politicians are bad this year. Trump is not a politician. And you know what? In a lot of ways, Trump's a living story. He's a reality show.
Yes.
And so you don't judge him by the same standards because his voters have decided not to judge him by the same standards. So you have to come that. So you have Clinton the politician versus Trump the reality show. Those are the basics, the primal stuff that you start with. Then you have to build a narrative arc on each one of those two, characters, and Trump did a better job.
Well, that's why he lives his life.
What do you think of that?
I'm okay with it. I'll accept it. Yeah, I think that's a pretty...
What I like about being friends with David is that it's really easy on me.
Sure, I think that could work. Yeah, we have to talk about it some more, of course, but I certainly came away with the impression that as dumb as the story was, Donald Trump provided a storyline. Yeah,
yes,
absolutely. He couldn't get away from
exactly, and then it's everybody else's job to judge whether it's dumb, not dumb, better than the other story, whatever it is.
The upshot of this, I think, is that Hillary Clinton should have paid someone for golden showers. I'm not certain that is it, but we would have been talking about that unless she emailed the request, in which case, forget it.
Yeah. But you have to build that story. That the one thing that was lacking from the Clinton campaign was that narrative arc.
All right. I can do that. And, well, here, look, we have a suggestion already. Chris
Right.
Fry here, tweeting us, also remember to have a boogeyman or thing to run against. Whereas
Yes.
for FDR, it was economic royalists.
And for
Trump,
Harry Truman, it was the Do-Nothing Congress. Yes, that's absolutely right. And so
we
that's
tried
that
the
third
Do-Nothing
point that
Congress
Mark Murray and the crew over at NBC made. That's absolutely correct.
Okay.
Now that he doesn't have Clinton to run against, what's he going to do?
I don't know.
Bloggers?
Yes, no. Email.
You?
I don't know. Maybe.
Maybe.
I haven't risen to the level of
John
attracting
Lewis.
his
He had to
attention
pick
yet.
somebody.
Yes, he did.
Don't move,
the
but he had
weekend.
to pick somebody, because
Yes.
that comment is absolutely spot on. So he had to. And the only one that was given to him over the week because of events and stuff like that was John Lewis. So even though it was a terrible one, he picked it because that's what you do.
It was there.
It was there.
So
Exactly.
on TV.
And that explains how come John Lewis, of all people, John Lewis? Why are you so dumb to pick up John? Because that's what he needed. He needed a counterfoil, a villain to run against, to make himself look good. He happened to pick, probably on balance, if you voted on it and analyzed it, the worst possible one he could pick ever.
Yes.
But he did.
Yeah. Well, he did. They seem to have found that. Well, they think they've found their footing on that one now because, of course,
A week later.
Yeah. John Lewis apparently said in announcing his boycott and trying to point out how unprecedentedly weird and
Right.
not normal the Trump administration is or will be. He said, boycotting an inauguration is a big thing. It's not like I go around boycotting inaugurations all the time. And then they realize, oh, didn't you boycott George W. Bush's first inauguration in 2001? And so it appears he did. And so now the narrative that Donald Trump spent the day with yesterday in talking to conservatives and supporters about it was, well, you see, John Lewis lied. He's a liar.
But here's his problem. That is really not a narrative. It's a detail. And he's trying to base the whole thing on this one fact about whether or not John Lewis did or not, show up at something. That's not going to work. What the narrative is going to be, John Lewis, hero, icon, everybody knows that. And then you have the inauguration, which a lot of people seem to be boycotting. That's what people are going to remember, not the details of who did and who didn't. And then you get the Women's March the next day or whenever it is, and a lot of people.
Yes.
And so, that's John Lewis's, I caught you on one of the, it's like picking up, who was it? PDQ Bach, Peter Schickele used to have these concerts, which I loved. And it was a parody of classical music. I don't know if you ever saw them or went to them.
Went to, no.
But they're very, very, very funny. And he used to start the program by saying, I want it, before we start, there's a housekeeping announcement here. And I just want to correct the program. There's been a mistake. And you have that whole program there from the show. So you open up, I want you to know that on page 12, if you look in the second paragraph there's a period missing. And then he closes the program and he goes on and he does a show. It's part of the shtick that he does with every show. But the whole point is, it's a minor point. It's going to get lost in the whole big picture. He's making fun of it exactly for that point. And, the John Lewis, what day did you not go to which inauguration back when and there is going to be completely swamped by true boycotts, the Obama's coalition's feelings about what happens on Inauguration Day. Just go ahead and interview them. What happens with the Women's March. The small points just get swept away by the narrative arc. And they think, I got this point. It's a narrative arc. No, it's a point.
Yes. Well, it's sometimes hard for them to tell the difference, I guess.
Well, you go with what you have, and so it's
what else
just
have they got there?
I have been struggling with the whole idea of why in the world would you pick on John Lewis, and this is my best explanation.
Oh, okay. I don't know. My explanation for almost anything he does is he saw it on TV immediately before saying
that
something.
too. The last guy who talked to him told him to
Yeah,
do it. That's
and
another very good one, which probably is true.
That is true. I see a lot. Everybody's sort of picking up on that, and increasingly, the last person to talk to him is the TV.
Yeah.
On his way out the door, down the elevator to the office, where he comes in outraged and starts saying things. I don't want to. I would love to know. I mean, there's no way to get that now, But sometimes people mistakenly leave their geotagging on, and you can tell where people are when they send their tweets. It might be just as important. I wonder if the information would be just as telling as whether something under his account was tweeted from the Android or the iPhone.
We used to do that during the primary, right?
Yeah.
Angry tweets versus nice tweets.
Yes, and it still holds true. But what I'm curious about is
right?
location.
Right? Is it Mar-a-Lago that he's nice, and then New York he's mad, and then when he's in Washington he's furious? That kind of thing.
I was more interested, and I think we can probably tell from the time of the tweets too. When he's tweeting from the Android, that is to say, on his own, before reportedly about 10 a.m. That means he would be tweeting on his own in isolation in his apartment in Trump Tower. Once he gets down the elevators and into the office, everybody has a chance to try and temper some of it.
So this, in other words, the one you just described is the true and the real.
Yeah.
If you're going to capitalize
no
this.
Advisors around, and it's just him and the TV.
Yeah.
And Fox and Friends can tell him what the outrageous thing of the morning is.
Excellent point.
He goes crazy.
Uh-huh.
So, John Lewis, and they likely didn't, I don't know whether they on the show knew who John Lewis was, but he certainly didn't. I mean, that was obvious right from the first tweet of it, right? Where he was all talk, no action.
Yeah.
I don't know how you could get that one any more wrong, but okay. Anyway, all right. Well, that one we can probably move off of that for now.
Just fun because it's good to have that in the background.
I understand
and see what's going
they're
on.
up to about 40 or so, 40 plus members of Congress, all House members boycotting.
Yeah.
No senators so far have said they will boycott, as far as I know.
Right.
They might, get sick that morning and not show up, I guess. But
all right. So can I add one more thing to this discussion?
You can. Add as many as you want.
I'm asking. Right?
Okay.
Before we move on, I just thought this was really good. It's from Mike Gerson.
All right.
It's in the Pundit Roundup today. And it's entitled, Trump's Attack on John Lewis is the Essence of Narcissism.
Essence of Narcissism. Okay.
Yeah. And, it's kind of ties in the theme you were just saying with the one I was saying.
Okay. That sounds like a good idea.
Which is always good. It's always nice to tie these things together. So who is John Lewis that Donald Trump should be mindful of him? Well, 76-year-old liberal politician with a disturbing habit of hyperbole, questioning the validity of George W. Bush's presidential win. Thank you for reminding me of that. I like him better already. He once compared John McCain to George Wallace, and now he questions the legitimacy of Trump's presidential victory. I could see why John Lewis would be annoying to a lot of Republicans. But by another definition, Gerson says, and remember, Mike Gerson is a conservative Republican who used to be Bush's speechwriter and is the probably only actual real compassionate conservative in existence who actually believes in the compassion side. I will make that point. People will disagree with me, but it is. So by another definition, Lewis was a consequential student leader of the civil rights movement. He led sit-ins to desegregate lunch counters, was one of the original freedom riders who integrated buses, experienced the hospitality of places such as Mississippi's Parchman Penitentiary, and carried away the memento of a skull fracture from Selma. Great movie. Everybody should see it.
All talk.
It must be said, the whole business of questioning a president's right to hold office is pernicious. It puts a hard stop on all civility and cooperation. The worst instance, of course, was claimed that Barack Obama was Kenyan-born and disqualified to be president, an argument based on partisan, conspiratorial, and quasi-racist lies. Thank you for saying lies. Enthusiastically spread by Trump. When the president-elect calls out Lewis on this topic, it is a display of hypocrisy so large that it's visible from space. Speechwriter, right?
Yes.
He's got good lines here. I love that one.
Visible from space. Oh,
yeah,
it's helpful. Yeah. Okay.
Trump seems to have no feel for, no interest in the American story he is about to enter. See that? Got story in there? See that? He will lead a nation that accommodated a cruel exception to its founding creed, that bled and nearly died to recover its ideals, and that was only fully redeemed by the courage and moral clarity of the very people it had oppressed. People like Dr. Martin Luther King, people like John Lewis. There are a lot of debunkers at work in American society. They point out the priest is really a balding middle-aged man with sweat stains in his armpits. They see a judge as an old woman who has the remnants of lunch caught between her teeth. He's a good writer, this guy. They see John Lewis as just another career politician, but the priest holds the body of Christ. He says he's a very devout Catholic. The judge embodies the rule of law. Lewis once carried the full weight of America's promise across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Were John Lewis to call me, Mike Gerson, every name in the book, I would still honor him. And then he goes on to say, and I think that's pretty profound. Trump often justifies his attacks as counterpunching, but even a glancing blow seems to merit a nuclear response. It's the exact opposite of the ethical teaching of the Sermon on the Mount and of the principled nonviolence of the civil rights movement. In these systems of thought, the true victory comes in absorbing a blow with dignity, even with love. It is the substance of King's message. It's the essence of his faith. And you can't always translate into politics. Basically, what he's saying is Lewis does and Trump doesn't. And so that's going to be a narrative that's just going to shine through any attempt of Trump to try to take Lewis down. Not going to happen. And I happen to think that particular piece is just a very good piece of good writing.
Yeah, I would agree. Well, that guy should write some speeches for something.
He should. But, that's another thing. In your career, because you've been in and around Congress, run into speechwriters?
Sure.
Some good, some bad.
Yeah.
And some turn into Chris Matthews.
I guess
and
they
some
do.
turn into Mike Gerson. I mean, it's just, they can write. But some of them get it, a handful. They really get it. You give a speech and you go, wow, that is like the essence of what they're trying to say. And Gerson's one of those guys.
All right. Well, I think he's done an admirable job with this one. And, of course, I always like anything that's visible from space.
Right. So, I think we can move on now because I think the story has told itself out.
Okay. He'll tweet something else later.
He'll tweet something else and then we'll change the whole topic. And when I look at all the other stuff here that I wanted to talk about, I think actually that was the most important. So, I'm going to thank you and thanks for having me on and probably just wrap up a little bit. I think that you're absolutely right. We really have to keep an eye on the details of these cabinet hearings. They're unprecedented. I just never saw a group of people that were so unqualified since the last time somebody unqualified ran and won for president.
Yes, although it does. It appears it's gotten worse. And I blame.
It's gotten worse. That's the thing. Every time they pull up another one, that was even worse than the last one. How is this possible?
You didn't think it was. You thought it was. It could never be surpassed, but. I think that there's a lot of the nominations really seem like they were made with the idea in mind that they would infuriate people with their inappropriateness, and I think that's Steve Bannon's doing. The defining characteristic still to me after all the explainers and all the other long reads about what is the alt-right and what it's all what they're aiming for and how they did it, where it came from, etc. It seems to me the unifying principle there is you gain credibility in the alt-right movement by finding a new way to offend large groups of people and be unrepentant about it. That's sort of the thing. That's like the gang initiation. For the alt-right.
Hey, did you hear that story about the alt-right fighting among itself?
I've heard several, and it all seems to be centered around the deplorable. But is there anything
right?
more wide-ranging than that?
But I'm referring to the alt-right neo-Nazi blogger who apparently is relatively prominent, and turns out that he was doxxed.
Yes.
And doxing being all the personal information and stuff like that, and he's apparently married to somebody who is Jewish, which is just like anti everything he says, and I guess. People are not happy about that for some reason.
I'm happy about it. It
but it's a big deal, and I don't follow these things closely, but the conservative people that I do follow have pointed to some of this and say, they're eating their own, and he's not even inaugurated yet, which, by the way, is a good thing for us.
Yes. Well, yeah, I didn't follow it closely either, but I grabbed the article so I can catch.
Oh, you did? Good. I don't have that one in front of me, but you do.
Yeah, because that was just too nutty.
Yeah, it was. Anyway, with that, let me say goodbye to my friend David Waldman Kagro in the morning. I miss not talking to him every day. I really enjoy this, but schedule being what it is, only a couple of days a week. And we'll be back. In fact, one of those days is tomorrow. So I'll be back tomorrow, and we'll do it again, and we'll move on from this story arc narrative thing, and we'll get to more specifics.
Yes,
as allowed.
Yes. If we don't, then it's okay if we don't. Okay.
All right.
Thanks very much, Greg. You do the same.
Bye.
Hang in there. Goodbye. And, goodbye and good luck. That's what else can we say these days? All right. Things that are flying by that are worthy of discussion in addition to the neo-Nazi blogger who turned out to be married to a Jewish woman. And it wasn't like something they discovered through a genetics test or anything like that. It was he always knew it. That's what made some of the story so bizarre. By the way, good tweet here from Joshua Block, who tweets as Josh ACLU, which leads me to conclude that he works for the ACLU, who says, in defense of Betsy DeVos, there's a greater chance of a grizzly bear attack than someone pretending to be trans to pee in a girl's restroom. There's an awful lot of pee in today's news, and there's really no one to blame other than Donald Trump for that one. Okay, so to catch up on things, let's see, where to go. All the least important stories. That's what we're famous for here on the Kagro in the Morning Show. Speaking of pee, I am, so I'm going to continue on. Trump, I guess, offered up something. Where did this happen? He was talking. Of course, he's on. He's on CNN. I figured he would have gone on Fox. I don't know who this is. I don't know who he's talking to. I'm just taking people's word for it. Bloggers have spotted it. I happen to be looking at the Joe My God blog, but I know it was picked up by Ross Story and Sarah Burris too. He went on TV and I guess actually voluntarily talked about the security or the Intel dossier and the and the golden showers thing, which is like, why aren't you avoiding that? That's very dumb. Anyway, he came on, or he gave time during his appearance to deny it, obviously, but the denial was kind of bizarre. Like, here's how you deny something like that. Oh, come on, that's ridiculous. No. Nothing like that ever happened. I didn't do that. They made that up. They were trying to discredit me, and they came up with the most ridiculous possible thing. And frankly, honestly, if he had said, you know what, it reads like some idiot coming up with, well, what can we pin on him? Well, okay, there's always the old he hired prostitutes thing. But let's make it worse. So yeah, what's repulsive sounding to the most number of, let's say, conservative-leaning Americans? Yeah, and that would be one of the things. I guess before it gets too bizarre, you could come up with more bizarre things, I guess. But whatever. I mean, I guess that's the one that goes, that presses credibility the most without being completely obviously, well, okay, they didn't do that. An ostrich and a donkey? Are you kidding me? No. How would you even find those I don't know. So anyway, but he starts out well enough, right? He says, in response to what question, I do not know. There's some video, but I don't know for sure that it frames the question. So anyway, so this is the quote that we have here that's written out. It's made up, never existed, never happened. That sounds like the way you should be handling it, right? And the reason I say so strongly, because I say that so strongly, probably, is because nothing is ever going to show up. There's never going to be a tape that shows up. There's never going to be anything that shows up. Now, I would be very embarrassed if a tape actually showed up saying something like that. I would be doubly embarrassed because I'm saying there's no tape. There is no event. Now, freeze right there. You're doing okay, although I don't know why you would go to tape or anything like that. Don't hint at that, but okay. So far, that can be characterized as a denial. Then this is where it goes off the rails. And it's brief, but in 1 second, he undoes all of this. It's great up until there. It's made up, never existed, it never happened. You're not going to see, there is no tape. You're never going to see a tape because it didn't happen. It couldn't happen. I think, again, he probably should have gone back to, I'm aware of the Russian proclivity for gathering compromat from the hotel rooms in particular. And he should have stopped there when he was originally saying that and not saying, yeah, there's cameras in hotel rooms all over the place. I know because I'm a hotel owner. That might not have been the way to go on that one. Anyway, so he's doing fine up until at this point he says, there is no event. And how does he know that there's no such event? Not because I don't do those things or I would never do them in a hotel room for sure because I know how, certainly not in Russia, because I know what risks there are involved in that. Instead, he says, I was never even in that room for that period of time. Record scratch, I guess. I need a sound effect for that one. That's what? That's the denial? I wasn't even in that room for that period of time. What? So I guess now it's, and this is interesting in light of what we read the other day, the question of how it was that this dossier was hanging around for so long, right? And the point, which doesn't exactly drive it home for me, but it was a good observation, I thought, was which was this kind of specificity is well known, I would think, among intelligence circles as foolish to put forward because it is, many of the key elements of it are objectively provable as either true or false. And although then again, I mean, I say, well, okay, so this has been out there for a long time. Has anybody got a confirmation? Can you show me something like that establishes that Donald Trump was in this Ritz-Carlton hotel in Moscow during the period that you say he was there with the prostitutes or with anybody else? I mean, can you at least establish that he was a guest at this hotel? And I don't know whether that has happened and I've missed it because I haven't followed the story that much. Because honestly, all I want to do is laugh about the pee. Anyway, but that's what makes an accusation like this so dangerous. And so I assume, now I wonder whether that has already been established because it's awfully weird that he says, that he frames his denial so carefully. Sure, I was there, but I wasn't in that room for that period of time, which is, I guess, an admission that I was in Moscow at that time. I was at the Ritz-Carlton. I did stay in exactly the room they describe, but what? You went out to get a drink or refill your, or whatever it was, or go to the bathroom to actually pee where it belonged in this period of time. And so I wasn't there the whole time. I don't know what that's a very weird kind of non-denial denial. Although the first part of it is that seems pretty good. It never existed. Now, I have wondered about this too. Like, I wondered if the Russians, I doubt it, but I wondered if they could be baited into like releasing the tape by, if we all expressed our doubt about it. Like instead of the uproar that the story had engendered, I wonder if we had responded by saying, that's ridiculous, that's bull, there's no way the Russians have that. And not only that, their intelligence services aren't good enough to gather that kind of information. That's ridiculous. If you have it, yeah, right, sure you have it. But if you did, you'd have to prove it to me. I mean, come on. There's no way you could have done that. You guys were incompetent, and you're even more incompetent than usual at that particular time. I wonder if you could have been, oh, yeah, well, I'll show you. Here you go. And then out comes the tape. I wonder if that might have worked. I don't think so. But it's an awfully good, it was a good setup for them because they knew we would just laugh at it and point and say it's true, and they would never have to release anything. So, anyway, I'm still, I keep coming back to it and making jokes about it. I'm perfectly willing to accept that it's true. I just don't really, truly believe that they've got a tape of it. But if they do, they should put it out. Okay, let's bring in Joan McCarter. Hey, good morning, Joan. How you doing?
I am doing well. How are you?
Right. I'm okay.
Actually, how do you say I'm doing well?
How do you, I don't know.
Yeah.
I say I'm doing good. I'm going around doing good things.
That's what I'm doing.
There you go. Right.
Because, boy, what a week.
Yes, well, it has been kind of strange.
And, in fact, I have to have a sort of abbreviated talk with you this morning because I need to monitor the Tom Price confirmation hearings.
Yes, we should bring that up today. We haven't really discussed that one. The development over the last day or so. Well, I mean, we've kind of known this for a while.
It's been ongoing. We've known that he's kind of a crook.
Well, yeah.
For months. since his...
What's a way of life?
Being tapped as HHS secretary.
Yes.
That he has a habit of buying stock in a company, immediately afterward introducing legislation focused on helping that very narrow health sector in which that company operates, and then getting campaign contributions from that company.
Yes,
it's happened with medical devices. It's happened with pharmaceutical companies. It's a pattern, we would say.
Okay, that is troublesome.
It is troublesome. I also believe he's among those who have not filled out all of his ethics paperwork.
Has anybody finished this?
I don't think any of them have, no.
I guess there's no reason to. I suppose I would not be motivated to do that either if...
knowing that you're a shoo-in, knowing that Republicans are not going to allow you to not be confirmed. Yeah. Yeah,
and once having observed an entire presidential campaign without the release of tax returns, I suppose, what are we going to tell the children / nominees at this point? Right? You need to turn it in, but I don't.
Yeah.
How come? And then I guess Donald Trump said, good point. I will kill anybody who doesn't approve your nomination, so why should you fill it out?
Exactly.
Well,
and in fact, I don't know if you saw this on Tillerson, Rex Tillerson, State Department.
No. Let's see.
Even if he doesn't get passed by committee,
yes,
he's going to get a floor vote.
Oh, yeah, okay, that is interesting. I mean, it could be done.
That gives Marco Rubio the opportunity to vote against him in committee, essentially.
Okay. Well, yeah, so he gets a free one. And, ordinarily, of course, so are they saying even if he loses the vote, just flat out loses the vote?
They're going to send him to the floor.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess that's a good time to bring up, typically all they're really voting on in committee is under what conditions are we going to send this nomination to the floor, either with the committee's recommendation, with no recommendation, or you can, in fact, send some nomination to the floor with the recommendation of the committee that you not accept the nomination. That doesn't usually happen because it's usually a sign that you shouldn't go forward.
Right. Usually failing in committee is the end of it.
Yeah, I guess it's so worth reminding everybody.
Yeah, there's no law that says it has to be that way.
Right.
So,
but it's also a good reminder that there's no law that says there has to be any hearing at all.
Right.
Which was part of the essence of many people's objections, for instance, to the proposal that Merrick Garland be installed on January 3rd. Well, you can't do that because there won't be any time for a hearing. Well, you don't need a hearing. Yes, you do. Legally, you're obligated to have a hearing. No, there just always have been hearings. You're confusing that with law. That's not in there.
Yeah.
And by the way, did I mention to you the story of Kurt Schrader from Washington, the congressman from Washington? I don't know if I mentioned that to you. I mentioned it on the air, but I thought I would just I'll bring it back up again because I'm so happy about this story. But I read this one the other day, just happened across it in the Hill. Kurt Schrader, Democrat of Washington, in his fifth term now, currently, like as of last week, began his fifth term. And I put it that way because he got remarried. He was divorced and got remarried, and bizarrely enough, decided to get married on New Year's Eve and then go on a honeymoon, even though pretty much everybody had by that point, if you were reelected on your calendar, January 3rd, got to go back.
Swearing in.
Well, he didn't go because he was on his honeymoon, which is a pretty good excuse. I don't begrudge him this. I suppose people in Washington may feel a little bit differently. They didn't do anything super important necessarily in the long run. But what I read in the Hill, Roll Call covered this one, was a very interesting point. They showed that, one, he had missed the swearing in and then missed I think was something like 6 roll call votes during that day and the next one while he was absent. And he came in the next week and got sworn in. And they noted in the article that though he had missed those 6 votes, he wasn't listed in the congressional record as having missed those votes because he wasn't actually a member of the House. During those 6 votes, he hadn't been sworn in and taken the oath. He had been elected, had elected himself to delay his own swearing in, came in, got sworn in, and still has, I guess, a perfect attendance record because those votes, though he's recorded as not voting for Speaker, he is not recorded as having missed any votes because apparently in the clerk's office...
He wasn't a member of Congress for those days.
It seems that.
Crazy.
Isn't that weird? I wish someone had said something about that being the case for senators who have not yet taken the oath on January 3rd. I suppose anyone could have tested it, of course. They could have said either I'm not interested in taking the oath or I'm just going to skip it and I'll come take it tomorrow or whatever. But no. Anyway, that was all so super crazy, and I don't know what I'm talking about, and doesn't the 20th Amendment answer that in black and white? And I guess not, or at least somebody has failed to tell the clerk of the House that that's the case. And gee whiz, just thought you might be interested in that one.
That is fascinating.
That sounds like you don't think it really is, but okay. I think you think it is.
I'm with you. This stuff is just fun.
I mean, that's what my wife said about it too, but she didn't mean it.
I like how this stuff works and doesn't work. It's all part of our job.
Yes. Okay. Well, anyway, I just wanted. I felt I was very excited by that one, and no one else is, and I thought I would tell someone else who might get it.
Thank you. I think it's fun.
Yeah. Well,
He's apparently Schrader is also apparently boycotting the inauguration.
Interesting. Yes.
Yeah, because he's sort of a conservative. I don't know that he falls exactly into blue dog territory.
Yeah, he did cast some weird votes right away.
He can toe that line sometimes, so yeah,
that
he
is
won't
what
be.
I hear. Okay. Well, I think it's a good
see
thing.
the news about his colleague from the Northwest, from Washington State, our friend Kathy McMorris Rogers.
Oh. What's going on with her?
She held an MLK, or spoke at an MLK event in her district back home in red Spokane, Washington. At least her district's quite red.
Okay.
And got booed off the stage when she started talking about how she's an advocate and is going to be repealing Obamacare.
Oh.
And
that's what
replacing it.
I did see her. I saw that there was a top recommended diary about it the other day, and I saw her picture, and I saw that she had been booed off the stage about Obamacare. I didn't realize that it was the event that she was.
It was back home. Yeah.
Okay. Whoops.
Constituents.
It's like people are coming to realize that they like the benefits of Obamacare.
Yeah. And that Republicans really meant it when they said they were going to repeal it.
Yes.
They didn't seem to recognize that before the election, and now that they've taken the votes, it's like, oh, hey.
Yeah, I didn't mean that. There's so many articles, just one after the other, of people, and there seem to be a couple different flavors of it, but either I didn't know that that's what they were doing, or I heard that they said that, but I didn't think they meant it, or they meant it, but I didn't think it was going to work. You saw this all over the
place with Trump. Oh, he didn't mean it. He just says that. He didn't mean it.
Well,
he meant it.
Yeah, and this is these are tough because, of course, every time he says something, he or Kellyanne say, "You're not supposed to listen to my words." Either don't listen to anybody else but me, and sometimes not even me. You got to listen to my heart or whatever. That was her explanation for it. I don't think he ever said anything quite like that, but the obfuscation is crazy. Obviously, you can't do anything but take his words literally and spell out what they mean. And if he wants to spend the rest of the day explaining how his words don't mean that, that's fine. But I don't know what else to do.
It is interesting to me to see the circle completed here, where these extremist Republicans are showing up in front of their constituents and getting shouted out for trying to repeal Obamacare. So it's a reversal of all of those town hall meetings we saw in 2010, where Democrats were running scared from people about Obamacare. Now Republicans are running scared from their constituents for trying to take it away. It happened to Kevin Brady, chairman of the Ways and Means Committee in Texas. He had a healthcare meeting back home yesterday, and his staff said it was going to be a chance for folks, quote, I just wrote this up, to share their experiences with rising costs and loss of coverage and choice. That's not why the 50 people who were invited to this meeting showed up.
Oh.
They showed up to yell at him about trying to take their health care away. Yeah.
That's that's good. And it's worth going, and everybody should be, I guess, these stories should serve as examples.
Yes.
If you live in a red district or whatever, for whatever reason, are in a district represented by a Republican, whether it's red or not, it's red-ish now, and if they have a healthcare meeting, I know some people would probably be reluctant to go, thinking they'd be outnumbered by Obamacare haters, and it turns out that the likelihood is that you would not be.
You would not be.
The dynamics are flipped, and I guess the people who would be in favor of the repeal of Obamacare are probably sitting home content knowing that their Republican member of Congress is going to be in favor of the repeal, and they can stay home and watch TV. The people who show up are the ones who are going to be angry, which is just the reverse of the dynamics, as you said. And so you might not only be in good company, you might be in the majority, and you might scare the crap out of your congressperson as well.
Scare the crap out of your congressperson. This is what needs to happen to them. They need to be scared of you. And, it's a lesson to me. I don't call my senators because they really don't care. They're not doing their jobs anyway.
Yeah.
But I need to be calling them.
That's true. And it's,
I think with Crapo and Risch, I think I likely have 2 of the top 5 not giving a crap at all about their jobs senators.
Yeah. I think that's probably true.
Yeah.
But always a good lesson you should chime in. I should really make that an issue. I now have Democratic senators in Virginia, although, and it's not the case that they don't give a crap, but it always sort of felt like at least one of them really didn't seem to care a great deal about constituents calling and complaining about things. But I don't know. It's starting to feel like everybody has lost their bearings in some way because times are crazy, and at every once in a while there are points at which when the phones really start ringing off the hook, they seem to notice that, and they just ask the question of the people on the phones: "What's happening? What are we really? I mean, how are the complaints going? Where are they?"
One of your senators you're going to need to be calling.
Yeah.
Because he's now ranking member on the Intelligence Committee. Mark Warner.
Yes.
And Mark Warner's not necessarily going to be the best advocate for privacy and for civil liberties at the Intelligence Committee that we might hope for. Chances are he's going to be better than Feinstein. I was disappointed Ron Wyden, who was the real champ, was up next for that, but decided instead to be ranking on the Finance Committee, which is an important place for Wyden to be, but boy, I wish we had him on Intelligence.
Yes. I wonder when would they have met to try and make those decisions? I mean, even at that point, it had to have been obvious that intelligence is going to play a major role, probably not in the way anticipated originally, but clearly by December, everyone was pretty clear on, wow, there might need to be some real inquiries in the Intelligence Committee about things that could affect the legitimacy of this presidency going forward.
On the other hand, Finance is going to be doing healthcare stuff.
Yeah.
Along with the Help Committee.
Hard to decide where you want to do the fighting.
We needed Wyden split to be able to do both of them. But anyway, we've got Mark Warner at Intelligence, and he's going to be needing some push, I believe, from his constituents to remain vigilant. So there,
all right,
you have
we'll
an
have to do
assignment
that.
from me.
So have to think about that, and who are Mark Warner's friends in the Senate too? You can lean on him inside, and if you're bothering them, and they say my constituents are calling me about you,
right?
That could make a difference too. All right, well, okay. Note to self, right? Somewhere, got to do that. All right. Yeah, that's going to be tough.
Everybody, and I really hate to do this to you, but I do need to. There's just so much. There's so much. On the front page of Daily Kos right now, Mark Sumner's story about how we're going to have tanks and goose-stepping soldiers on parade all the time now that Donald Trump's going to be president.
Right. I opened that up. Thankfully, I'm glad Mark got on that one because I saw it earlier this morning and all I had to open for it was TPM, and I'd rather open our own page on that one.
Yes.
Yeah, that's his version. I don't know how it came up. Someone asked him, how will you make America great again? By the way, some specifics or something. I'm not sure
military
why he offered that up. But yeah, that's the answer. We're going to have tanks and the military and whatnot. What did he say? The military may come marching down Pennsylvania Avenue. Not supposed to happen.
No, it's not.
And then, of course, that military may be flying over New York City and Washington, D.C., which, by the way, if you want to panic people, holy mackerel, fly military jets over either or both of those cities.
Because it's not like they have any recent memories of horrible things coming from the air.
Oh, my God. People will
New York and
dive for
Washington.
cover when they see that. Unless it's, a well-publicized thing in advance, and even then, people will miss the notice for it. But if they're flying in weird places, if they're, military jets occasionally, if they're flying in a formation like down the river, everybody says they're going to a parade. Around here, we know
or if
that.
it's obviously the Blue Angels.
Right. Or if they're P-38 Spitfires, okay, they're flying to the Smithsonian, right? We occasionally see things like that, but full-blown, low-flying, roaring military jets, even in formation, in the wrong place in Washington D.C. or basically anywhere in Manhattan, people assume terrorist attack and they start panicking and go wild. So why not trigger that every once in a while, I guess he says. But we sort of have specific rules about, parading the military through domestically. But okay.
We have rules, and by the way, this is what an authoritarian ruler does.
Yeah.
The display isn't just for foreign powers.
Mm-hmm.
So, there you go.
Okay. Well, all right. We'll be watching out for that, I guess.
Also, too, there's a very fun tweet.
Yeah?
Not very fun. The Jumbotron that they have erected directly in front of the Lincoln Memorial for the inauguration.
Oh, directly in front? Which way is
directly
it facing?
In front. Open up my tweet feed and
okay.
you will
all right.
see
I'll take a look at that. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to not want to look you up in this tweet deck because that's going to make me... Well, all right, I guess I could use that. So they've set up a Jumbotron right in front. I'm trying to imagine why...
right now it's saying, make America great again.
Okay.
I guess if they can't actually have A-list performers, or C-list, or D-list, they'll make them as big as they can on screen to compensate.
Okay. Where's the... Okay,
but yes, as Talia at 2020 Fight, 2020 Fight, Trump putting up a gaudy Jumbotron that blocks the view of the Lincoln Memorial is a perfect metaphor for his administration. Yes, Talia, it is.
Huh. Oh, okay, I see it. So it's... Oh, and there's... Where is this? So this is right in front of... there are chairs there. What is this on? Have they put something over the reflecting pool here?
That's what it looks like to me.
Okay, I didn't know
they've got some kind of scaffolding there.
Okay, and then they've got so you if you're sitting in the audience, and I guess they've put a stage up on the front of the Lincoln Memorial, and so it's interesting. It's a picturesque venue in your head when you say, oh, we'll have a concert right on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial. And you can't see Lincoln.
Because there's a Make America
Right.
Great
again, yeah.
Jumbotron.
But I mean, it's pretty far up there too. Like, even the
Yeah.
front row of seats is so far back that you can't actually see the performers. Although it looks like, I don't know, I can't tell whether they have a exclusive section up front on top on the stage. I don't know, I can't tell. Well, it's a weird staging, that's for sure. And I was wondering about that, like a Jumbotron directly in front of the Lincoln Memorial. I guess this is for the performance. I thought it might be for the inauguration itself, in which case you're facing the wrong direction. And ordinarily you wouldn't have a Jumbotron there. I don't think I've ever seen one set up right there, because that doesn't make any sense.
Because it blocks the view of the Lincoln Memorial.
That's true. And Lincoln himself does not need to be able to see it. He's just a statue, just to point that out. So don't worry about him. But that's a weird placement. Who performs on this stage? We don't know anymore.
Who's performing at all? Anybody? Did you get anybody?
I don't. They still have the country guys, right? Lee Greenwood and one of the Travises, and I think that's it. But they lost the Springsteen cover band. They dropped out, and then
as I've seen a lot of people say, this is sort of the state fair lineup of talent that he's got.
Right, and literally true. I know that the Three Doors Down group, which I still have not got a fix on exactly who that is. I remember the name, but their upcoming tour schedule is Inauguration, and then a bunch of there's
a strawberry
Indian
festival in
casinos.
Florida,
Right. And then the Strawberry Festival, which is a terrific thing to do. I'm glad to know that there's a Strawberry Festival that early, but you got to go in Florida to get it. But that's it.
It gives you hope for spring to think that there's strawberries somewhere, and maybe we're going to have spring soon.
Right. So at least,
of course, I have another snowstorm happening outside my window.
Oh, well, that's Idaho for you. I guess we've been in the 50s for a week here, and
we've been in the single digits for 5 weeks, and already have had 2 feet of snow, and we. I should probably leave before I get into the vagaries of local politics, where our city is not in control of our streets.
It's riots or snow?
We're like the only metropolitan area where the county is in charge of dealing with the streets rather than the city. And residential areas just aren't at the top of the list for getting plowed.
I guess not.
So it's been interesting here in Idaho.
Yeah.
It's been very interesting for the last month.
Wow. Well, there's
a little bit of local government for you and how stuff works.
Yeah. It's important to know these things. And we had to get out of our bubble. We've been told this time and time again. And there's really no better way than to talk to people on the streets, except you're not on the street because the street hasn't been plowed, but in the house looking at the street, yes. The man in the street interview, one, not a man, 2, not in the street.
Because you don't want to go in the street because it's scary out there.
Still, yes, the point is, okay, that should be typical weather. Here we have, global warming style weather. Weather forecast, by the way, is for 90% chance of rain for Inauguration Day, clearing up, and looks like only 10% chance of rain for the protest marches on the following day. So, message from God.
Proof that God's a woman.
Yes, that may be it. Not that she had to be in order to attend the parade, mind you. It's apparently a giant controversy.
It's for men too.
Yes.
It
turns out that that's the case.
John Chait.
Yeah. I didn't realize that was such a big question, but I'm glad that's been cleared up.
All right, my friend. It's time for me to go see what Tom Price wants to do to ruin everything.
Yes.
Including Social Security, Medicaid, Obamacare.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, everyone please remember that they're not supposed to be able to do Social Security in reconciliation.
Yes, everybody remember that, because they're certainly going to try.
Yeah. Oh, I would bet a small amount of money that at some point Social Security, quote unquote, reform will be brought up and recognized as controversial, and some member of Congress somewhere will say, we know we can do that in reconciliation because it can't be filibustered. And I would even bet a little bit more that their local television station and newspapers will simply report that as being the case and not mention, no, you can't. But in the end, they won't, obviously. I don't think they'll try and include it in anything like that. But be on the lookout for that, and you can write letters to the editor and say, everyone is dumb except me, because I know the rules. Not
Absolutely.
me. Everyone else do that. You can claim to be smart all on your own. It had nothing to do with me. I didn't write the rules. So.
And on that note, my friend, I have to go because we're getting opening statements.
Very good, except for the fact that it's about very bad people.
Very bad people.
Let you go. Please let us know what's going on. We'll look out for what you've got for us on the front page at Daily Kos later on today. Thanks, Joan.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kagro.
All right. Take care. We'll see you next week, I think, unless this is illegal. Joan McCarter, senior political writer for the next couple of days anyway. Daily Kos.
Bye-bye.
All right. Take care. Good luck. Yeah, we should peek in on some of these confirmation hearings. None of them going particularly well. Again, though, low odds on there actually being anything like a defeat. Although I kind of feel like it might not be a bad bet, if you're a betting person, to come up with at least one of these nominations that's going to go wrong. And now that bet becomes easier to make in light of information. I don't think I put anything aside on this one, so we're going to have to open up the news and scan for it. But it was, who was it that has been saying that they've had second thoughts about accepting the position? I believe it was the Department of Labor Secretary designee, whose name I keep getting wrong because there's just no, how could your name be Puzder? I just keep going back to Pudzer, but that's because footnote, I guess, to the golden shower thing. Maybe that's what's distracting me, although I think it was happening before that. Anyway, yes, I understand that he's the CEO of, remember him from Hardee's and Carl's Jr.? I can't believe that that's actually coming true. Carl's Jr., right out of Idiocracy. He's the one now apparently saying, yeah, let me grab this here. CNN has this one. And as you know, they're the most trusted name in news, so I have to use them. Sources, the most trusted sources in news, apparently, say Trump labor pick Andrew Puzder has voiced second thoughts about nomination, probably his own. And I would suggest that they might actually be his first thoughts about it. But it's an expression to say that they're second thoughts. President-elect Donald Trump's choice to be labor secretary has voiced second thoughts in recent days because of a relentless barrage of criticism from Democrats, labor unions, and other liberal groups. A business ally and GOP source tells CNN. Oh, I'm sorry. A business ally and other GOP sources, plural, tell CNN. Andy Puzder, is he going by Andy as opposed to Andrew? Okay. Is the CEO of the company that owns the Hardee's and Carl's Jr. fast food chains. He may be bailing, said a Republican source plugged into the Trump transition effort. He is not into the pounding he is taking and the paperwork. The paperwork. Can you believe it? A Trump transition spokesperson declined to comment, but later pointed to a tweet made by Puzder after CNN's report, which said, I am looking forward to my hearing. And really, that's all it says. I am looking forward to my hearing. That's a child's tweet. Democrats and their allies have launched an aggressive campaign against Puzder, who opposes key Democratic workplace priorities, including the goal of a $15 federal minimum wage. Yes, didn't he say just the other day something like, or maybe somebody pulled out of the archives and reminded us just the other day that he had once said, how do you pay somebody $15 an hour for scooping ice cream? Very interesting. I thought, good insight into that. And it's funny because it'll be perceived among Trump supporters as, yeah, that's not a skilled job of any kind. You should be the kind of job that you pay a teenager, I don't know, maybe $5 an hour to do. Of course, that's below federal minimum wage, and Is it? I don't even know what federal minimum wage is these days, but most minimum wage laws would mandate more. But I don't know. People seem to think like, well, back in the old days it was better, and there's certainly something to it that a teenager's summer job need not pay the same as a living wage for an adult person trying to support a family. But of course, the reality is that an adult wage, living wage for supporting a family would be considerably higher than that. And sure, you could pay them that, but you might, maybe you don't have to pay the teenagers as much. But of course, I don't know. There were some great responses to it. I did see a tweet in response to it. How do you pay somebody $15 an hour for that? What was that tweet? I'll have to search that one up. But there was also, it made me think like, well, how do you think your ice cream is going to get sold? You're going to have to pay somebody some decent amount of money to stand around. You can't just make ice cream and sit it out on the street and say, to hell with it. People just put money in the hat for the ice cream. That isn't going to work either. It's a pretty important, it doesn't take a great deal of intelligence to scoop the ice cream, but somebody's got to give up their time and be there, and that's that. Anyway, yeah, and as Ricky points out, Ricky May, and tweeting this one, the problem is that the adults are the ones doing those jobs and they need a living wage, and that's true. Not always the case, of course, but where it is, not always the case that that adults supporting families are doing those jobs, but where they are doing it, they ought to have that, they need to have that wage available to them. And it's, I don't know, it's probably not a good idea administratively to say, well, either on a case-by-case basis or depending on your age, you ought to be able to do more or less. But I can see why people want to allow for variance in those things. Yeah, to a lot of people, off the top of their head, it probably does make a great deal of sense to say, okay, kids working for the summer perhaps need not get the same sort of support. Although, I don't know, I suppose another way to deal with it was you could say, well, the wage has to be $15 an hour, but there might be, or some other number, I suppose, if you prefer, and the benefit levels might vary as between people supporting families and those not responsible for families. I guess I say that because while true that kids working for the summer don't have the same long-term expenses and obligations, obviously, that someone supporting a family does, still in all, you're probably working over the summer for money to make it, say, through college. And $15 an hour cash payment will help you make it through college, whereas offering benefits probably doesn't. You can't trade in your benefits for cash to pay the purser at what do they call them? That I can't even remember they had a terminology for it that I can't remember anymore. For who you had to actually pay for your tuition to. Well, never mind. That doesn't make much of a difference. Okay, so let us continue on here. So, as I was saying, the nominations hearing's not going particularly well, but I don't expect any unforeseen outcomes, with the possible exception, I guess, if there's anything to it, of Andy Puzder turning around and going home in all of this. It doesn't say that he will. Then, of course, the inclusion of the tweet, I guess maybe Trump could lean on him and say, look, you're embarrassing me. If you don't like the job, stay in it for a year or two, and I'll replace you with somebody else later. That's okay. But I don't know whether he would consider it a personal embarrassment or loss if someone were to turn around and go home. Let's see. There is this in the end of the article. Puzder's confirmation hearings was initially scheduled for this week. It's now on hold and likely will not be held until next month. It's not unusual for nominees from the private sector to be taken aback by the harsh political climate that often greets new presidential appointees. To that end, two Republican sources did not dispute but cautioned against reading too much into word of second thoughts. One of them added that, quote, Trump loves it and wants the fight, and said it was his information that senior transition officials were aware of Puzder's concerns and urging him to stay in the fight. So we'll see whether that actually ends up being the case. Okay, back to our roundup of other wacko stories. the one that Greg mentioned, the popular neo-Nazi blogger. How do you get to be a popular neo-Nazi blogger? You got to win friends and influence people, I guess, among neo-Nazis. A popular neo-Nazi blogger resigns in shame, if you can believe it, after revelation his wife is Jewish. I don't know what the shame is supposed to be, or if that's really what's motivating it either. I mean, to be honest, having read the article, one of the few things that I previewed ahead of time, just because I wanted to see what kind of jackass was this guy, and I decided I'd pop it into the queue and share it with you guys. I don't know if shame is really an operative thing for this guy. Anyway, Drew Salisbury is the name of not the neo-Nazi, but the guy who wrote this blog entry at Death and Taxes magazine, mag.com. I don't know anything about that or who they are. But I'll leave it to you to look into it. Okay. You might not have heard of the Right Stuff blog. And it's not a trick name or anything. It's pronounced and spelled exactly as it sounds. The Right Stuff blog. But if you've seen parentheses, the triple parentheses around a person's username on Twitter, yes, you're aware of its influence. The Right Stuff is a fairly popular neo-Nazi blog whose founder, Mike Enoch, E-N-O-C-H, has been called one of the 3 most authoritative members of the alt-right, along with Richard Spencer, the guy in Whitefish, Montana, whose march is being postponed, yes, and Daily Stormer creator Andrew Anglin, whose name came up in that Richard Spencer article we read the other day about the protest, right? The Echoes meme, that's the name they have for the triple parentheses. The Echoes meme, created to identify Jewish people on the internet, was Enoch's doing. His podcast, The Daily Shoah, which, if you have any idea what that means, is like getting punched in the heart, by the way. It's described herein, I think, somewhat inaccurately, as a pun on the Hebrew word for the Holocaust, the Daily Shoah. The pun is that it's, instead of show, the Daily Show, right? The old Jon Stewart vehicle. Created, of course, by our friend Liz, right? Liz Winstead. Don't forget that. Never forget that. But yes, popularized to a great extent by Jon Stewart. The Daily Show, get it? There's the pun. Instead of the Daily Show, it's the Daily Shoah, S-H-O-A-H. That's the Hebrew word, yes, for the Holocaust. That's how they refer to it in Hebrew. And I guess that's a pun, except, yeah, it didn't work on the level I was thinking of. Like, the pun is on Daily Show. It's not a pun on the Hebrew word for Holocaust. It's just a straight up usage of the Hebrew word for the Holocaust. It's a pun on the Daily Show. It's a pun involving the Hebrew word for the Holocaust. But we won't hold that against Drew here. That doesn't make a great deal of difference. But it's a good opportunity to stop and remind you that this guy's podcast is called The Daily Holocaust. Like, haha. The Holocaust is hilarious because, like I said, the chief currency of the alt-right is being as bizarrely offensive to as many people as possible. So you do things like name your podcast The Daily Holocaust, The Daily Shoah. Anyway, believe it or not, and this should give you some pause, right? Every once in a while we say things like, hey, we have about 4,000 people downloading our show daily. Apparently, out there, even though we keep reminding you that alt-right neo-Nazis are a very, very minor slice of the population, 100,000 regular listeners. So I'll just pause to say, let that motivate you, by the way, if you have not yet taken the opportunity to become a supporter of the show. Although it's an awful time to ask for your support when I'm also at the same time saying, gosh, I don't know whether we're going to have to go on hiatus in order to watch the Senate closely to see how they're doing handling the Trump administration agenda. And we really do need to discuss that. Not so much whether it will disrupt our show, but what they're working on. Because I think I could do both. And I think we can keep the show operating on a semi-regular basis because the Senate moves so slowly and operates on such a lackadaisical schedule that I think I can still do both. Anyway, just sort of putting that out there. This guy's making a living somehow off of this, and we're not. And we really should be able to do that. Anyway, so here's a daily shame for you, is that there's 100,000 people listening to the Daily Holocaust. Anyway, it turns out Enoch isn't the Jew hater he professed himself to be. Or at least we think not, because it turns out his wife is Jewish. That is weird. Now, it goes on to say, leftist trolls revealed in a now deleted Medium post that Enoch is actually a guy by the name of Mike, and this is fun. Mike, I'm going to guess his last name, Pinovich. I'm guessing. I might be guessing wrong, but you're not going to convince me of that. It's Peinovich, which I don't care how you tell me that's pronounced. That's basically Penisovich, if you ask me, and you did, because you're here listening to the show. Okay? Leftist trolls, though, have revealed this. I don't know why it's deleted in the Medium, deleted from Medium, except perhaps Medium might have rules against outing or doxing people. That could be it. I also don't know why they're referred to as leftist trolls. I mean, I guess anybody who reveals anybody else's identity might possibly fairly, in the first instance, be referred to as a troll, but it sounds more to me, they might be leftist, I don't know, but it sounds more to me like they are, revealing an important truth about somebody who's a disgusting lowlife. And although, as it turns out, he might be just playing the role of a disgusting lowlife. I can't tell from this article whether he's genuinely anti-Semitic but happens to be married to a Jewish woman, which is possible, believe it or not, or is just playing that role because it's lucrative or interesting or fun for whatever reason to him. Anyway, his name, I'm saying, is Mike Pinovich, and he's a New York City, New York State, I don't know, website developer. So really everything, there you go, right? Get out of your bubble and figure out why people are into Donald Trump and why people are into the alt-right and where the anger comes from. I don't know. Mike Pinovich, a New York website developer? I mean, is this guy Heartland pickup truck driving kind of guy and we don't know about it? Is he commuting from somewhere far, far away to develop websites with his own two hands in New York City? I don't know. In white supremacist forums, the article continues, across the internet, alt-right babies at first refused to believe the information, and Pinovich initially denied it himself when contacted by Salon via email, which, as you know, using email is horribly illegal, and Salon should be impeached. Anyway, so he denied it, saying he used to write for the site, The Daily Show, but that he was not Enoch. The Right Stuff. The podcast is The Daily Show. Anyway, I was involved with that site years ago, he said, writing a few libertarian articles for them and using my PayPal for the exactly 0 donations that the site ever got when it was still a libertarian blog, he said in an email. So he wasn't making a living at it then, if he's telling the truth about that. Furthermore, he insisted the site's anti-Semitic and racist coverage had turned him away from it. I cut off ties when they went the direction they are going now, and that was 4 years ago, he said. Honestly, I have not thought much about them. As you can see from all the public writings, I am a libertarian. My wife is Jewish. Do you really believe that I am this person? Well, you should, reader, because he really is this person. Shortly after his contact with Salon, Pinovich posted a private blog post on The Right Stuff, admitting everything, and announcing his resignation from the site in shame, a la Clayton Bigsby, whose name does not ring a bell for me, but there's a link, and if he doesn't ring a bell for you, you can go figure out who that person is. So, a quote from that post, as I am sure you all know, I was doxxed, and an ill-advised attempt to fool the media about my identity led me to not talk to you people, you people, well, yeah, that's what he says, and to try not to talk to you people and to try to simply write it out by being silent. Okay, that kind of makes some sense as a sentence structure. This was irresponsible and a disservice to all of you. But, by the way, what was irresponsible was running a neo-Nazi website and doing a daily Shoah podcast. But no, he regards the fooling everybody else and not admitting to them that he was a fake as the irresponsibility. Yes, my wife is who they say she is. I won't even bother denying it. I won't bother making excuses. If this makes you want to leave the movement or to have nothing to do with TRS, the right stuff, then I understand. Don't lie for me. Don't try to defend me to those attacking me. Don't jeopardize your own reputation by defending things that you don't think you can, like anti-Semitism and being a part of the alt-right, I would say. I could try to explain my whole life for the last 10 years to you, but what difference at this point would it make? Life isn't perfect. I would be interested in finding out what the hell you think you were doing for the past 10 years. And I think this story came to my attention perhaps through a tweet from LOLGOP, who said, I'd watch a Netflix show that starts with this premise for sure. And I guess I really would like to know. And this article doesn't say, and I look forward to finding out if it's ever revealed in an article, what was this guy up to? Was he faking it? Was there money involved? Did he make money? Did he find it was simply a way to have people send him money if he would spend a couple hours out of his day adopting an alter ego, being a wacko anti-Semite neo-Nazi, but it was bringing in $100,000 a year? Is that why he was doing it? I could see the temptation at that point. I don't think I could stomach doing it, but it is one of those sort of things that makes you wonder why you get up and go to work every morning. If you could just fake be this other kind of neo-Nazi would be a difficult thing for any of us here, I think, to pretend to be, not only because we probably couldn't pull it off, but because we couldn't stomach it. Why would you want to perpetrate that? Anyway, while the doxing was reportedly perpetrated by leftists, it had been encouraged by months of infighting among the many hate groups that follow the site. They hate so much, they hate each other, I guess. In December, a former competitor named Mike Cernovich, whose name has come up in the context of that deplorable, which we mentioned earlier, hinted to his readers that one of his rivals was, quote, morbidly obese and is married to a Jewish woman. My goodness. Two horrible, horrible things, apparently. Around the same time, 8chaners, remember the people who left 4chan in frustration that it wasn't disgusting enough? 8chaners, mad that the right stuff suggested non-Jewish white nationalists might share common goals with far right-wing Israelis, doxed other bloggers on the site and revealed a guy, charmingly known as Ghoul, was actually, gasp, the child of a lesbian. They should probably follow that one up with, I guess something like that, right? The child of a lesbian. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. Well, anyway, that's the problem with hardline alt-right neo-Nazism, it seems. I'd say maybe that's a problem with it. But in this case, our author writes, the problem is there's always going to be someone who hates more than you do. In the end, hopefully they all just eat themselves. And I find it hard not to wish for exactly that. And by all indications, I guess the photo that was originally accompanying this piece has disappeared and been replaced, perhaps, I don't really know why. I mean, out of deference to this guy. But anyway, it turns out that Mike Pinovich, I guess, would probably make pretty good eating. He seems to be a fairly sizable fellow, as I said, morbidly obese. I don't know if it would be healthy eating, but I'll leave that up to the alt-right cannibals, I guess, and they can decide whether or not to eat that particular guy. Okay. Wow. What else have we here to examine in our morning roundup? Let's see. We'll head back to Pocket. So there's the story. It really is rather an amazing picture they have of this guy. He is gigantic, and he's in the picture originally that I think accompanied the piece. the guy in the photo, who I guess is alleged to be Pinovich / Enoch, he's pictured at a protest that must be going on in California, as he is standing behind police tape that is labeled Los Angeles Police Department police line, do not cross. There's a number of Nazi emblazoned banners flying behind him. He is dressed in all black and wearing what appears to be some sort of self-styled neo-Nazi uniform. It is a black shirt, the long sleeves of which have been rolled up so that he is in short sleeves, and it's got like collar tabs that are supposed to be reminiscent, I guess, of SS collar tabs, but they say something else on it. And he's wearing some body armor, like a bulletproof vest strapped on top of the thing, and he is rather obese, as we mentioned, and he's also wearing a helmet, which appears to be sort of the the modern style protective helmet worn by police when they're dressed in their riot gear. It's it's the current iteration of the protective helmet. It's just a dumb looking one. It looks almost like a football helmet without a face mask, and it's got a chin strap. He's got the whole thing strapped on. Why? I'm not certain. I'm not sure whether he's expecting an assassination attempt and wearing body armor against that, or whether he guessed that body armor and a helmet looked vaguely militaristic, more so than his neo-Nazi uniform. I don't know whether it's supposed to be for effect or what, but what the other effect is, one, he's wearing a chin strap, and he's got it buckled on, and he's, like I said, he's a heavy set guy, and I think morbidly obese is probably an accurate description. So, his head sort of, especially with the chin strap on, his face sort of melts into his neck, which sort of melts into the collar of his shirt, and with the chin strap on, it's covering up. He's got looks like maybe light brown to reddish facial hair, which I think is a goatee, but the chin strap is in the way of the beard portion, so it just makes it look like he has a weird, droopy mustache. And, gosh, the total effect is just so fun. And it only helps obscure the differentiation between his chin, neck, and I don't know what else is in there. So somebody has described him as looking like a thumb with a mustache. And that's what it looks like. I don't know what to tell you. It's very amusing now that he's been discredited. I'm sure it would have been, I think, regarded as infuriating otherwise. The idea that the guy is holding himself out there as a leader of anything seems rather ridiculous. Okay, well, I think we can get off of that and back to Pocket. Let's see what else is hanging out there that makes the most sense in terms of bringing up. Okay, I know that maybe we should get to other information about other nominations that are pending, since we'll be seeing those votes beginning on Friday. And we should, I guess, talk about procedure. When I keep hinting to you that there might be an upcoming project that takes more of my time and gets in the way of consistent production and dissemination of the show and podcast, what am I talking about? Basically this. You would have seen some writing from Marcos on this subject that was based on some initial discussions that we had. Basically, the idea is that they've been wondering over at Daily Kos, can you take your understanding of Senate procedure and Senate rules that you gleaned from the filibuster reform project and kind of stand it on its head? What sort of tactics exist under Senate rules to delay or even block the implementation of the worst parts of the Trump agenda, whatever it turns out to be, whenever he makes up his mind what the agenda is going to be? What sorts of things can we do? So you might have seen some writing, and I guess I'll have to make a note to go dig that one up for inclusion in the roundup. But Marcos referencing the other day the fact that there were some 1,200 plus executive positions subject to the advice and consent of the Senate. That is, if he decides to fill them all. And you'll recall that I specifically mentioned that Trump, or any president for that matter, might not necessarily have much interest in filling the St. Lawrence Seaway Commission, and that would be among them. And so there may be hundreds that they could skip by. And so, we pointed out, for any one of those nominations that he attempts to make, if he actually nominates someone, you could in fact demand not only a roll call vote on that approval of that nomination, but you could essentially filibuster that nomination, and reminding everybody, yes, although cloture can be invoked by a simple majority now on anything but a Supreme Court nomination, cloture still needs to be invoked. And the cloture procedure has not changed, neither have the rules around cloture, and so you can make it take about a week and a half per nomination, perhaps as much as 2 weeks, on any given nomination, depending on the schedule and other things that might get in the way, if you really wanted to stretch it out. It would still require filing for cloture, still require allowing the cloture petition to ripen, would still require a vote, though that vote wouldn't require 60 senators to invoke cloture, and only a simple majority would suffice. There's still the matter of 30 hours of post-cloture debate time being mandated, and if you insist on eating all of that up, you can eat close to a week of regularly scheduled Senate time on any given nomination. Right? They meet on Monday and say, we want to move to this nomination. You say, to hell with that, I'm filibustering. They say, fine, we're filing for cloture right away on Monday. You got to wait for calendar Tuesday to pass, and then on Wednesday, as early as 12:01 a.m. if you want to keep the Senate in session overnight, but otherwise, not 12:01, but 1:01 a.m., because you got to wait an hour into the session on the day following the calendar day that has to pass, right? So at 1 in the morning, you could then have a vote on cloture on the first nominee, 1 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday, invoke cloture by simple majority, and then run 30 hours off the clock, and you can certainly have it, you're certainly able to just run it continuously no matter what anybody does on the floor or doesn't do on the floor, and you could all break and go home for lunch or breakfast, what have you. But 30 hours starting at 1 o'clock on Wednesday morning means, let's say 24 hours later, it's 1 o'clock in the morning on Thursday. Then you need another 6 hours. So 7 a.m. Thursday is the soonest you can get to a vote on approving that actual nomination, which of course only takes, 15 minutes to half an hour, depending on how you string it out. And you can make a fight over it. You can make it difficult to find a quorum to begin the vote and make them come and find you. At any rate, Thursday morning would be the earliest you could move on to nomination number 2, at which point you would again have to file cloture on Thursday morning, wait through calendar Friday, and then have a vote 1 a.m. Saturday morning on cloture, only to then have to run the clock until 7 a.m. Sunday morning, at which point you would finally get to vote number 2 on cabinet confirmations, right? So if you start this process first thing in the morning on Monday, you only get 2 people confirmed if you run around the clock 24/7 from Monday until the following Sunday morning. In other words, you can see that with 1,200 of these things, if they actually tried to fill all of these positions, this could go on for some time. In fact, it could literally eat up the entire term of the Senate, and certainly all of Donald Trump's terms before you got around to, again, it wouldn't necessarily be important. The last 1,000 positions might mean absolutely nothing to anybody. But they are good paybacks and opportunities to loot the federal treasury. So, there are going to be people who want to occupy those positions. The longer we keep those positions vacant in terms of looting, the better. I don't know whether it necessarily has any policy outcomes. There are certainly places where it could become dangerous, and those places will reveal themselves in due time. Anyway, the point of it would be that what I'd have to be wasting my time with would be watching to see whether or not the Democratic senators are taking full advantage of these opportunities, or whether they're letting those opportunities slip through their fingers. And it will be tricky business because it isn't as simple as just saying all of the unanimous consent requests that are made in the Senate ought to be objected to across the board, no matter who makes them or what they are about. There are going to be situations in which it won't make any particular difference in terms of eating up floor time to object to a unanimous consent request. For instance, I believe the Senate is currently operating under one such unanimous consent request right now, which was not objected to, and it was operating that way over the course of Monday's business as well, because it didn't make any particular difference in terms of delaying things. For instance, I think I mentioned last week that they were going to be considering H.R. 72, which was that bill to allow the GAO to sue other agencies in case they didn't come up with the records that they were requesting. That bill eventually did pass 99-0 earlier this week. You might have, it's going to take some consistent monitoring, because I think the program that we're talking about is probably going to be sold along the lines of just object to every unanimous consent request ever. That was the way Republicans handled it when they were responding to the use of the nuclear option, etc. We're gonna slow the Senate to a crawl by objecting to every unanimous consent request. Even they didn't object to every single one. At first they did, but then they found out there was no particular purpose to it. Like this week, if Democrats had objected to the unanimous consent request to schedule a vote on H.R. 72, which has the effect of saying we are going to remove this bill from being subject to filibuster. If you, by unanimous consent, agree on a vote time, then you can't filibuster that bill. So why not? Why didn't Democrats filibuster every bill like they really should be doing in the wake of the election and turning over things to the Trump conservatives? And the answer, well, part of the answer anyway, is there really wasn't anything else scheduled to go on this week. So while you could have filibustered on H.R. 72 and spent the week waiting for a cloture motion to ripen and then to vote on it and then running the 30-hour clock and then having to vote, you would probably end up with holding a vote on a bill that was likely to pass 99-0 on Thursday and force people to hang around and have things to do or possibly be called to the floor for quorum calls all the way from Monday to Thursday, when instead you could simply dispense with the bill, admit that it was going to pass 99-0, not bother with the cloture thing, and have the luxury of spending all of your workday in confirmation hearings instead of being called to the floor for stupid procedural votes. And after all, none of the nominations will come to the floor for a vote until after Friday, when the president is actually inaugurated anyway. So wasting time between Monday and Thursday didn't get you anything in particular. Time would be wasted, yes, but the time was going to pass anyway with nothing happening, even if you didn't interfere or get in the way. And so I suppose also, I guess, to the extent that we anticipate being accused by Republicans of obstructionism, and we will be engaging in obstructionism, that is the truth, we might as well keep the number of cloture filings down, because as you know, when people need shorthands to discuss to what degree is the minority obstructing this year, people like to turn to the count of the number of times that cloture has been filed for as an indication of that's the number of how many filibusters there are going on. We've described on the show before how that's an inaccurate number, but it's become the proxy. So I guess to the extent that you can avoid having that number tick up by 1 and get no benefit from it whatsoever, why bother adding that 1 to the tally? Keep the number as low as possible. So that would be the explanation of why you would not have seen objections to unanimous consent requests being made, for the most part, so far. And to anybody who would come away understanding the Democrats' role in the Senate right now as being one of objecting to every possible unanimous consent request, you would be confused and believe that Democrats were slacking, backsliding, or basically turning into Republicans unless you had somebody on hand to explain these things. Now, this is why I happen to think it might be a good idea to maintain the radio show as well as watching what goes on in the Senate, because it's a hell of a lot easier and somewhat more fun to explain it than it is to write about it. But that's what we'd be spending our time on. And it may come to pass that more time needs to be dedicated to those things. And after all, to the extent that it saves anyone from the tragedy of living under an approved Trump agenda, I suppose that's time well spent. Anyway, speaking of time well spent, we've spent all of our time and haven't gotten anywhere on clearing out the backlog lurking in Pocket, but we can, of course, turn to that on Thursday and Friday. But I wanted to at least get out there the explanation of, A, what the hell am I talking about every time I say I might have to spend more time away, and B, give you an early preview. So you who are Daily Kos radio listeners, you who are Kagro in the Morning show listeners, have the information before anyone else over at Daily Kos, the nuance of what will go into a program, if there is one, of caucus-wide dedication to obstructionism. And remember, it's not hypocrisy if it helps you. It is, of course, hypocrisy. Absolutely true. Sue me, I want to win. That's basically what's going on. These are things that I think part of the explanation of what that I just gave you was included in my proposed reform packages. But hey, what can I tell you? The Republicans passed up the opportunity to adopt those reforms, and they're stuck with what they got. They can change those rules at any time, and we'll have to be wary of that. But we'll deal with it when the time comes. Okay. Time to hand things over to the guys over at the after show with a quick explanation of what's coming up. Here comes Justice's summation of things to come. Wyoming's Republican-controlled legislature is set to outlaw renewable energy. What a great idea. Trump's healthcare advisor falsely claims birth control is abortion. We've seen that one before. And a nasty brawl looms over Trump's Supreme Court pick. Ooh, that should be interesting too. For the last half, they'll be reporting Trump may have accidentally created a new women's movement, and massive ice shelf fracture forces the closure of the British Antarctic Survey Station.
On netrootsradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
Thank you for listening to all of that. Plus, of course, the Connect, Unite, Act Daily Kos Community Calendar, as we always used to say, and more on the After Show with Wink and Justice coming up next right here on Netroots Radio. Do stay tuned, and they'll be with you and carry you through the rest of the day and round up all that great news I ignored to talk about weird stuff.